Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cyber Weekly. Today, uh, we are having an interesting guest, Dr. Chase Cunningham, who has come on the show, and it's very nice to have you, Dr. Chase.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate the invite.
You're welcome. Um, for those who don't know you, Dr. Chase is a 13-year-old NSA and USA Navy cryptology co- crypt, I'm even finding it hard to
Big words.
cryptologic veteran turned cybersecurity, and is known for his pragmatic voice. He didn't just study cyber warfare; he operated inside it. Today, he translates that hard-won experience into frameworks, strategy, and straight talks that cuts through the noise of multi-billion dollar industries built on fear. Thank you for coming on the show. Uh,
Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate the invite, man. It's good to be here and do stuff, with a group that haven't worked with in the past.
yes. I've given a very poor introduction to you, but if you were to give a proper introduction to yourself, and for the folks home who don't know you, who is Dr. Chase?
Sure. So I'm a retired Navy chief. I was a cryptologist for my whole career. It's a kind of a weird word to say, even in English, right? Cryptologist is kind of a mouthful. Then I worked at NSA for a while after that. I was at Forrester Research, launched a bunch of their zero trust stuff out into the market. And I've been a consultant since then. In the meantime, I managed to write quite a few books and getting a bunch of patents. And I typically work with government organizations and small businesses, mostly on cybersecurity strategy and planning.
That's interesting. Welcome, Angela. Angela is one of our co-hosts. She's the beautiful lady you're seeing at the bottom there. Nice to see you, Angela.
Nice to see you, Dale. Welcome,
Yeah.
Dr. Chess,
Hey, how
Dr.
are you?
Cunningham. Fine, thanks. How are you doing?
Yes. On to the first question. From the NSA and the Navy to becoming Dr. Zero Trust, what were those defining moments in your career that shaped the way you think about cybersecurity today?
Yeah, so I've just been very blessed to be around a bunch of really good people that gave me opportunities, which I think is something that the market needs to do for everybody. But I was lucky enough to get some of those opportunities, and probably one of the biggest ones was transitioning out of the military and getting invited to go work at Forrester Research. When I got there, Forrester was doing a bunch of stuff in strategy and concept around zero trust and cybersecurity. And to their credit, they were willing to let me kind of approach this from a formalization perspective and put it into a framework. And the market likes frameworks. People like to have kind of a call it an anchor to put their feet around, and that was what sort of launched it. It was also just good timing because right at the same time we launched all the zero trust kind of formalization into the market. COVID hit the world, and everybody had to figure out how to work remotely, and ZT happens to align very heavily to that. So, yeah, that was kind of a watershed moment overall. And then since then, I've just been, lucky enough to work with other really smart people that have kind of brought me into different conversations. And I think that cybersecurity is a mission. I don't think it's a market. I don't think it's a thing that we do. I think that every human being on the planet, if they're going to be digital, has the right to be secure. So if we approach it from that mission, perspective, then I think we do better for everybody.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
oh, that's great. And you said that you are privileged to be surrounded by people who gave you the opportunity. How did they do so? Were they apprenticeship or internships? What kind of help was it?
Yeah, so a lot of my mentors were working at different organizations. John Kindervog, who's a great friend of mine, was at Forrester. He kind of recruited me over there. I've been lucky enough to have mentors like General Greg Toohill, Herb Kelsey, Joseph Blankenship. Like I've got a long list of folks that have been super valuable for me in my career. And every one of them has just been kind enough to give me a chance to do something, and luckily I delivered on those things to a decent degree. So it's been one of those ones where you kind of find people that you want to be like, when you grow up, and I tried to be like those people, and they were kind enough to let me follow in their shadow.
Okay, sure. So you worked both actively in the cyber operations and executive strategy. What do most business leaders still misunderstand about realities of modern cybersecurity warfare?
Yeah, I mean, the good question. I think nowadays everyone is aligning really heavily on how to solve this AI problem, and everyone is kind of scared and freaked out about AI. What I remind people all the time is, number one, none of this stuff is AI. That's a marketing term. It's machine learning. It's doing it really fast, and it's doing it in very cool ways, but it is not self-aware, and it is not self-determining, which is a good thing. We don't actually want real AI. And then the other side of it is, nothing has changed in the OSI model or the technology stack or the reality of the space that we operate. They're just applications that are doing things quicker, better, faster, and in some degrees smarter. Your fundamentals still
Mhm.
matter. Your strategy still matters. The right controls still make a pretty big, difference. And I think that that is what I try and work with people on all the time: is don't get wrapped up in the hype and the marketing stuff. Really think about this from a technical perspective, and then you're grounded in reality, and that is where you've got to operate, is in a place where you're doing things realistically and strategically. It's not rocket science to combat this problem. I mean, it's 2026,
Mhm.
and the number one password that people still use today is password one exclamation point. Like, fix that problem and then worry about AI.
Admin 123 also.
Yeah, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, sure.
I think you're
Though I
muted,
think
man.
we've lost your audio.
So I was saying that before we go any further, what do you think zero trust is for someone who actually doesn't know what zero trust is?
Yeah, so it usually gets overcomplicated. When we're talking about zero trust, what we're talking about is removing trust relationships from inside of systems. And if you back up for a second and think about it, does a computer or an application or any sort of digital thing, does it actually have feelings and emotions? The answer is no. It's just a thing that does what it's told. Trust, which is inherent to humans, is something that we've put into these systems to allow them to work really easily, which is great. However, that also increases the risk profile. And if you have a lot of trust inside of systems, you're basically allowing things to occur without understanding what is going on. And that's where things go bad. So when we want people to understand zero trust, what we mean is remove those default trust relationships, and you'll be better off. It doesn't mean don't trust your employees. It doesn't mean don't trust, the internet or whatever else. But what it really means is remove default trust from inside of systems, because that's a human emotion and it's only adding risk.
That's true.
So why did people actually come up with that term of zero trust for you, Dr. Zero Trust? Because it's
Yeah.
a very interesting name, yeah.
Yeah, so ZT as a term kind of evolved out of about 10 years worth of research that John Kindervag and he led around how to remove trust from systems. And people always say, well, you can never get to zero. That's correct. You can never get to zero, but zero is a better goal than saying some trust. That sounds kind of dumb if you ask me. And then For the Dr. Zero Trust thing, it actually started out as a joke with some friends of mine that I was doing work with, and I was finishing up my PhD, and they said, "Oh, you should have got a PhD in Zero Trust, ha ha," and that just turned into Dr. Zero Trust. So it, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting name. I should also be called Dr. Cyber Cyber Weekly one of these
There you
days.
go.
So, you
There you need to
operationalize.
earn the PhD.
Yeah.
I should, by the way. So, you operationalized Zero Trust through the ZTX framework and helped make it a practical enterprise. Looking back, what was the biggest challenge in convincing organizations to move from trust by default to never trusting, always verifying?
Um, I mean, the biggest thing was we were strategically ahead of the market, right? We were thinking a few years ahead of where the market needed to go, which is a good thing because you can think strategically and then the market catches up. And we were definitely ahead of the curve on what that looked like. The technology for ZT probably didn't really catch up until, or is still catching up, but in most places it probably started catching up 2021-ish, 2022-ish time frame. And now it's really like become an actual capability set. And that's kind of the cool thing is to put an idea and a concept and a strategy out in the market and be far enough ahead that people go, interesting, we think we could do that there's a value there, etc. But the tech for it is still coming, and then the market aligns to it, and then the technology shows up. I mean, it's almost as if you were to say, like, a bunch of people riding around on horses, and somebody goes, what if we had a really fast horse that could carry a whole lot of weight? And then somebody says, oh, I built a car. That's kind of how it all fell together.
Okay. It's interesting. And the cybersecurity industry is flooded with so many vendors and next gen solutions. You have been very vocal about the cutting the security snake oil. What are the biggest red flags organizations should watch out for when evaluating cybersecurity tools?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that you should ask any vendor that's trying to sell you a piece of software is what is their strategy? How do they do cybersecurity? What is their plan, goal, technology stack, all those things? And if they can't tell you and they can't clearly let you know that whole approach, then I wouldn't buy tech from them because why would you buy tech from someone that's not doing what you're doing in some way, shape, or form? It's like going to a doctor and the doctor says you need to take, blood pressure medication and all this other stuff. And you say, okay, well, what do you do for your health? And he goes out back and smokes cigarettes and drinks. It's just not a good approach to the problem. So asking those vendors how they do, what they do, the value proposition, those types of things. And then the other thing to really focus on is if you buy this new capability, what does it allow you to either optimize or get rid of? Because you can't just keep adding tech into the stack. You've got to be able to make sure that the tech you're using is actually valuable and delivering capabilities. And that's the thing that people should focus on. Any good vendor solution should allow you to either optimize or offload.
Oh, sure. That's a nice point to take home. It will help people escape the also vendor lock-in and
Yeah, vendor
Yeah,
lock-in is
yeah,
definitely an issue.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah, that's usually a very big issue.
mm,
But however, sometimes it's very tricky to. There's always that ease of having a tool that works compared to going for a one which is like a long shot, which you're not sure how exactly it works, or it's still in a starter stage. How would you approach such a situation?
Well, I mean, the thing about vendor lock-in is most of the time it's not the vendor technology that's got you locked in. It's the fear of moving into something new or unknown that might introduce a problem. And that's perfectly valid. Like that's a good business conversation to have, but it shouldn't stop a company from moving forward with the right approach. And in 2026, I mean, we're coming up on 2030 pretty soon, you don't really have a valid argument for folks saying, I don't know how we can try this out or test it. That's what virtualization is for. So Yeah, when I talk to folks that say, "Oh, well, we're not going to move because of this reason or that reason," the question then becomes, are you going to operate your business on the business side with the same tech you had 5 years ago, 5 years from now? Nobody says yes because they're all looking at the best way to go forward and the new tech, whatever. If you would do that for new business, why would you not do that for something as fundamental to security for your business? And that it doesn't mean you have to jump off the cliff and do it all at once. It doesn't mean you just, burn the building down and move to a new one. But there's programmatic strategic approaches to this, and technology is in the market now to let you do that. So, I think that usually that's in the US we call it a cop out. It's not an actual reason. And if you're just copping out, you're copping out for the wrong reasons. If you want to sit and wait for the next 5 years to pass you by in today's world, good luck. You won't be around in 5 years.
That's for sure.
Are the AI robots the ones which will be around in the next 5 years? I'm not
I, I'm
sure.
waiting. I'm waiting for the AI robot that will fold laundry. I'll buy one of those. The moment they come up with a laundry bot, I'm buying it.
Yeah, for the folks who are in our audience, you can feel free to ask questions in the comments, and we shall be able to add them in the session. I don't know why my English is disappearing. Yes, with the unprecedented scale of threat actors poisoning open source code, how does the fundamental architecture of your networks need to shift to contain these highly integrated threats?
Well, I mean, that's where I think the point really has to get over to folks about the whole zero trust side of it is nowadays we don't even build apps and software like we did, say, a year ago. Now anybody anywhere can go into Claude and go, I have an idea for this blah blah, and then it'll start putting it together, and then you do the code and dev and everything from there. You basically should understand that all of those applications or everything that's being built now is potentially risky. And the reality of what it is that it's just the same stuff, but it's just done faster and probably with more risk. So the same controls still provide value, and people should still approach it programmatically. But you should also understand at a organizational level, every single time that we consider letting somebody leverage one of these tools or bring it into the system or trying it out, we are gambling. And if you gamble foolishly, you lose. So just be very aware of that and be willing to put controls in place to minimize that risk. It doesn't mean everything is bad. It just means that everything is risky until proven otherwise.
Mhm. So, in other words, zero trust for everything.
You said it, not me.
Yes. And so you've recently filed 4 patents. Uh, which ones are those, though? Could you please tell us about?
Yeah, so without getting myself in trouble for the patent filing, I filed some patents on how to determine malicious activity within network traffic based on
Mhm.
algorithms, which is pretty cool, and there's kind of no way to hide from it. So that one's pretty interesting. And then a couple of the others were how to ingest massive amounts of data, like hundreds of millions of records, and then be able to leverage that
Mhm.
data for the purposes of tracing and tracking fraudulent activity. And so it's a
Mhm.
self-learning sort of approach, which is kind of crazy when you say, throw me 100 million records and let the system figure out where the problem is. We can do that. That's what those
Mhm.
patents were for.
That's very interesting work. And while protecting intellectual property, what specific friction points um, have you found in current security architectures, and what are you currently trying to solve?
Yeah, I mean, your IP nowadays is spread all over everywhere. People should realize that when you're working on a project that is your intellectual property and you're asking Claude or Perplexity or ChatGPT for help, you are putting your stuff on a billboard that's kind of going out there in the internet. And if it's not properly secured, especially those AI systems, you're going to be in a bad spot. I would always encourage people, number one, if you're working on those types of things, talk to an attorney before you even start developing or putting things in place because your IP, depending on how you do it, could be invalidated. It could be at risk. You could be basically giving your stuff to a vendor and saying like, you guys go off and use this. So there's real risk there. Now that doesn't mean you shouldn't use those tools. I use them every day, but you should be aware of the risks that are associated with that. Intellectual property, it used to be, when you were talking about IP in the space, you were talking about maybe somebody's formula or database or something like that. Nowadays, we create so much stuff that intellectual property is all kinds of, I mean, really, literally, right now, we're creating IP for your channel. That intellectual property has value. So, how do you secure it?
Yeah. Sure.
That's a fair point. Now, a person called Pitches, I don't know how to pronounce it, Pitchin Vibes 5858 says, "Thank you, Dale, for this. I wanted to inquire from the threat intelligence perspective, what does Dr. Chess see that we here in Uganda or Africa lack in terms of insight or visibility, especially from the experience in the NSA? Where are we lacking as a country?"
Well, just speaking tangentially, because I'm not deeply embedded in what you guys are doing over there, but I can speak just kind of from the side of nation state Africa level. I think that what I've run into majority in the African sort of area is you've got a lot of banking, you've got a lot of finance, you've got a lot of oil and gas and those types of agencies and things over there. But I don't know that you have a lot of let's call it intelligence agency capability. And that's also because of the nature of kind of how your systems are set up in the states and whatever else, and not everybody plays well with each other. In the U.S., we're lucky; we have 50 states, right? Everybody kind of plays under the same thing. Whereas in Africa and a lot of other places, you have countries inside of countries and states inside of states and whatever. So that's a problem for intelligence sharing. And additionally, and I'm not intimately familiar with all the things going on in Africa, but I haven't seen a lot of stuff coming out of the African Union around what intelligence capabilities you currently leverage for which purposes. So without knowing that, like at the U.S., we have the U.S. military and the NSA and Langley and other agencies that's all they do all day. Within the African Union, I don't know that there's a whole lot that says this agency does this thing. And that probably is a very fundamental starting point that should be fixed.
And that will be with our generation, I think. We'll start implementing that.
I mean, you sure could, for sure.
Yeah, in terms of pivoting, I think we are on the right track in terms of improving that, because if you hear the way we are improving in terms of data collection, in terms of communication within ourselves and other countries, especially in terms of threat intelligence, because the fact that we even have a SAT in the country and it shares information with other SATs in different countries, that could show that maybe, yes, we are reaching that level of proficiency. Not as good as we would want to be, but yeah, we are getting there.
We are on our way.
Progress is progress. You got to remember that too. Is like if you're making some progress, great, keep at it. I think you went mute again. Sorry.
Dell, I think we've lost your audio.
There we go.
Yes, so the same person is asking, and does he think we depend so much on vendors, which is a form of data breach, for lack of a better word, that we hand so much information, intel to vendors?
Well, I mean, from being an Intel person, the thing that I think a lot of non-government agency or non-government companies should remember is even if you have the Intel, the real question is, what are you going to do with it, right? I mean, if you're a regular company, and say China breaks into your network, are you going to go after China? No. If the Russians show up and DOS your system, are you going to go throw a missile downrange in Moscow? No. So really, when you're thinking about the intel side of it for a business, for a non-government agency or non-government entity, if you've got intel that gives you something you can use and helps you stop something bad from happening, that's about as good as you're going to get. And that's kind of as far as you need to take it. So I think a lot of times people market intelligence as the super cool, sexy thing that a lot of people need to have because it gives you crazy insights, whatever else. In truth, if I'm in my house and your intel can tell me that somebody's in my front yard trying to break through the front door, that's the intel I want. I don't need all the other stuff. So I think that that's where it gets mixed up is people go hunting for vendors or agencies with super cool, crazy intelligence. What are you going to do with it? Like, if it's not really valuable to you, then why would you spend the money or resources on managing that?
Mm.
Yeah, that reminds me of a talk I had with one of the professors. He was talking about, yes, you can find a vulnerability in a system, but if that vulnerability you're exploiting can't do critical damage, then
So
what's the
what?
point of that? Yeah.
Yeah, I've always reminded people vulnerabilities are kind of like a bullet, right? If I have a bullet in my hand right now, I can throw it at you. It might hurt a little bit, but it's not going to kill you. Now, the moment I take that bullet and I put it into a gun, now we have a weapon, right? So that's the difference between a vulnerability and a weaponized exploit is can I put that bullet in a gun? And if you can't put it in the gun, you should be aware of it and you should know about it and maybe inventory it, but is it going to kill you? Probably not, unless somebody throws it really hard.
Mm.
That's an interesting take. Another person called Ajok Joan says, "Hi Doc, looking at the fast-growing technology and increasing threats, what is that top-notch advice you would give to companies that rely on vendors for controls?"
So, I mean, I think the thing to remember is you're buying tech from a vendor that's going to help you solve a problem. It's not the other way around, right? A lot of times people get wrapped up in we need this thing from the vendor and we'll work to make the vendor stuff work. That's not the way that the space is put together. So if you have an issue and you find a vendor that can solve it, make that vendor solve that problem the way that you want them to. That's what you're paying them for. Additionally, you don't need everything. You don't need everything all the time. If it's not going to provide a value for you to fix a problem, it's actually probably introducing a problem. And you don't want more problems, you want more solutions. So, as you see the vendor marketplace and all the cool stuff coming and growing, great. But just be very selective about what you use and where you're going to use it. You don't need everything all the time. There's a great quote from a military leader, Frederick the Great, that says, if everything is a priority, nothing is. That's what you want to think about.
That's true. But then also, I feel like when you buy that tech, you should also know how to use it. Most of the time, people don't configure the solutions well. So you'll still buy it, and executives will expect you to have a certain level of immunity. But if you don't configure them well, then nothing is being done.
Very true. Yeah. Let's see. Somebody else is asking about China here, so that's an interesting question. So yes, so your point on China and Huawei and all that, there's a really good book called House of Huawei. If you haven't read it, go look it up and read it. But it's a really good breakdown. Look, the thing to remember is that they're in cyber. It's the ultimate level playing field. No one is better than anyone else. Every nation state there is trying to get an edge up on everyone because we can. However, there are some agencies and some entities that are doing things that are kind of outside the bounds of, let's call them, good human practices. China might be in there. And I think in Africa you have a significant problem because for about the last 5 to 7 years, the African Union has bought very heavily into Chinese tech, including Huawei everywhere and all your 5G and those things. And by law in China, every system that has to be released, every tech, every piece of software has to have backdoors built into it. That's just how they operate. So, the question of are those things inherently compromised? Yeah. Does that mean that you freak out and burn the building down? No. but be aware of it, and then understand that that is a definite risk that's going on there. And additionally, don't buy all the hype that the U.S. media tells people about. We've removed Huawei from our systems and things like that. We have not. They are still here. We still buy tech from China. We're still deeply exposed to the threat from our nation state adversaries.
Could you repeat the name of the book? I think the
Yeah, it's
person
called
didn't get it.
House of Huawei.
House of
House of
Huawei.
Huawei.
That's great.
I didn't know that by law they had to put back doors into it. And then how there's security by design. So is that vulnerability by design?
I mean,
That should be documented.
I call it production grade vulnerability. I mean, it's literally rolling off the line with it, and it's
Yeah.
what's there. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So
Speaking of, Dr. Chase actually has a YouTube channel, which I'm going to flash. Uh, let's see if my thing allows me flash it on the screens right now. Yeah. So if you can check him out on YouTube, Dr. Yeah, it's the same name, Dr. Zero Trust. So make sure you get
keep it
it.
in mind.
Yeah, keep it in mind. Yeah, so I'm seeing another question here. What skills should one focus on in terms of security wise in the age of artificial intelligence?
Well, I think a really good question, a really bigger thing there, and this is even what I tell my kids is like in the world we're staring at now and in the very near future, you kind of don't have to go work for a major company anymore. Like you can be your own company. You can be an entrepreneur. You can build things yourselves because all the stuff that used to be kind of under the covers for all those big companies, finance and marketing and ops and all those things. Now you can do those your own. So, I think in the age of artificial intelligence, what should you focus on? For me, and what I tell my kids is learn how to use these things to make you more effective across a whole bunch of different spaces. It's still the same old thing we've done in business and humanity for a long time is how can I beat the competition? Now you have tools that will allow you to beat the competition quicker, better, faster. So, on the cybersecurity side, like the tools that I think you should focus on is getting really good at learning what these tools and these exploits do. Run them through Claude, run them through ChatGPT, have them kind of tell you what's going on. I would also say get really good at figuring out how to do open source intel because now you can do so much open source intel with these solutions. Yeah, it's a good time to be alive. If you sit around though and just kind of do nothing, it's not necessarily the best use of your time because everyone else is scrambling to beat you to the punch.
I feel like nowadays the biggest challenge we have is the overwhelm of the information. It's too much. Like, if you wanted to get a training, you'd get it in 50 different places.
Yeah, and I
Uh,
think I think that like for me, one thing I've done is anytime I come up now with a problem of it's too much for something, I'll go off and build a bot to solve that problem, and I use them all the time. Like I have a bot that runs for me to do research every morning at 7 o'clock in the morning. It crawls the internet, it pulls in all the research articles I want, it scores them, and then it pumps them into my Google notebook. So I'm building a corpus of research materials there. Just like for when I travel, because I travel all the time, I've got a bot that will make sure that I don't book a flight on the same day that I have a call. So, those types of things. You use the tools, but just remember that they're tools. And if you don't use them, somebody else will.
that's an interesting way of looking at it. Angela, can you read the next question? If you can, okay, let me do
I
it.
don't see. I
Okay.
don't see.
How do we, so let me put it on the screen. Hold on a bit. Technology being technology. Um, how do we guarantee zero trust with autonomous agents where we need to control more of their actions than their access?
Yeah, so one thing I'll do is I'm actually going to drop a link to a paper that I just published about this exact topic, but it's a very interesting area that we're dealing with now for agentic systems and zero trust. But just going back to, kind of the fundamentals. I mean, again, agents and agent and AI and all that stuff, they're just machines and applications. So the same sort of approaches strategically still apply. It may just apply to different scope and scale and speed. And that's where you get into like policy engines and those types of things. And to one of their points there about how do you guarantee, I never guarantee anything, because as soon as I guarantee something, somebody finds a way to, break that guarantee. So
Yeah.
don't guarantee anything in security.
Yeah, we hosted at CISO once who said, they had given them a budget for all these tools, and then like the executives are like, oh, so we've spent all this money, so we're guaranteed not to get hacked, right? And that's what people want to hear. And they don't want to hear it, like, you know what, security is never it's
There's
never
no such thing as
guaranteed.
100% security.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, all the workshops I do with people, like the first day, the first line is I tell everyone assume breach, like you're compromised right now. It's
Mm-hmm.
not that hard. Like it's there. It's just I mean, it's almost, if you think, I remind people to think about, the human immune system. You've got bad things going on in your body 24/7, 365. It's there already currently. The nature of genetics and the food you eat and all the other things that go on, like there's bad stuff happening at a cellular level 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't get bad because your immune system takes care of it. So that's the same thing in cyber, is you want to have a really good immune system so that the bad doesn't become really bad.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it could be self-healing anyway.
Self-healing, self-identifying, self-replicating, all those things. Yeah.
Yes.
But now with this new age of AI, where the thing is self-replicating, you find that the malware is self-replicating. How do you handle that, especially if you are planning on using zero trust?
I mean, if you think about, so let's talk about self-replicating polymorphic malware, right? Which is something that freaks people out. What is the one thing that malware has to use in order for it to actually move through systems? It's the network,
Mm,
right? The network, all roads lead to
mhm.
Rome.
Yes.
There's no new protocol that I'm aware of that's been invented that you can get around the network.
Mhm.
So if you accept that that is
Mhm.
a fundamental capability, where should you apply segmentation
Mhm.
controls to stop that stuff from moving? The network. So you can
Mhm.
have your crazy
The
cool
network.
polymorphic self-replicating malware, but if it can't transit the network, I don't care. It's stuck on one spot. I'll deal with it.
Mm. Mhm. Yes, that's true. All roads lead to Rome. So
All
you
roads
still
lead to
stay
Rome.
in,
Yeah. So,
yeah.
so another person called Peaches has asked a question here. What have you noticed about vulnerability research in the USA and Africa, and do we have the capacity?
I mean, vulnerability research now with autonomous systems and these things is great. Mythos is obviously blowing up all over the place, and people are very worried about it. But vulnerability research is still kind of like you were talking about earlier, Deo. It still is not. It's more of a research thing for the sake of finding problems. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is a
Mhm.
weaponized exploit and goes from there. So I think we're doing things really big, really fast, which is good, but we need to be aware that there still is fundamental things in the system that are going to negate the issue that you would face from there. I don't know that anyone's any better at it than anyone else, to be honest, anymore. It used to be that if you were an SA, like you were doing things nobody else could do. Not now. Everybody can do this type of stuff.
Mhm.
True. That's the problem of nowadays, that anyone can learn anything and anyone can buy phishing as a service
Yep.
product, and then they become a problem for you.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's the reality we live in nowadays. Yeah. So feel free to keep on bringing in your questions. Dr. Chase, what, according to you, in the next 5, 10 years, apart from buying an AI robot which is going to take over the world. What do you see as a way for us to go in terms of cybersecurity?
I mean, I think where we're at in cyber is in the next few years, we're going to see these kind of agentic, autonomous security column platforms are going to become a real thing where you're going to have small businesses that can afford enterprise level controls and enterprise level capabilities with an autonomous capability set. And that's going to be good for people because you won't have this issue of small businesses can't do cyber. And if you look at the kind of hacks that have taken place over the last X number of years, it hasn't been major companies that typically failed. It was vendors, third parties, and contractors. So small business needs to have cyber capabilities. There's some vendors out there that are working on these types of agentic approaches, and I think that that's going to be one of the most significant areas in cyber for the next few years is the ability to share enterprise level security tech with everybody everywhere and actually have them use it because they don't have to know how to use it. They'll be able to use it because the system knows what to do.
Mhm. And I feel like not even small businesses alone, even home home networks, it will be individualistic because with the IoTs, people really need security with all the things that they're using. So
Hmm. Yeah, I mean,
security will be brought home. Yeah.
everything's connected nowadays.
Mm.
My pool out back has got a Bluetooth connection to my phone. Why? I don't know, but it's there.
Oh.
That's that's so
And yes,
interesting.
people's fridges are talking to them.
Hmm.
Your new washer is going to be talking to you too. So
Yep.
really, security.
Yep. So your home's full of IoT devices.
Hmm.
Yeah. So now, if an organization wants to set up theirs, now we already have, we have IoTs everywhere. We have our things in the cloud and all that. If they are to start zero trust and let's say onboarding people, what are those common mistakes you usually see people having in terms of zero trust?
Yep. Usually people go too big too fast. They'll say, okay, we want to roll this out for, a segment of 5,000 users. Like that's way too big. Let's get it right for 50 and then we'll work for 100. And if we have it 100, we'll do it for 250 and grow from there. And it's kind of counterintuitive because people think, well, technology now makes it where you can do stuff so big so fast. It should just work. But if you get it wrong at 50 people, it's a lot easier to fix than if you get it wrong at 5,000. So that's kind of where, that
5,000. That's
systematic
true.
approach goes. And then I think the other thing too that most people don't do that they should is if you're going to really practice for a security strategy, why would you not let the bad guys find the bad stuff? Like run a red team op against your network, run a red team op against your company, and
Mhm.
see where you fail. And then you know what you would need to protect first instead of guessing. Because you might guess that it's phishing or you might guess that it's a vulnerability on an app or whatever. Test it, and then you know what to fix.
Sure.
Interesting. We have a couple of more questions. I'm seeing one here for that is if technology is not doing what it's supposed to do. Um, what are some of the opportunities that you feel may what are some of the opportunities that you feel that maybe governments here in Africa could take advantage of with the US or the NSA?
I mean, I think a couple of big ones is maybe bringing over some experts from the U.S. to kind of coach people through and work with your businesses and organizations on how that stuff might line up. I'm sure that it would probably be good for African Union and those countries to also reach out to like InfraGard and some of the U.S. intel and data sharing organizations so that you can get some of that stuff back and forth. It's a combination of things, right? You need you need the people, you need the leadership, you need the data, those types of things. So I think honestly, programmatically would be a good thing to start sharing back and forth between African countries and the United States. And I'm a big fan of helping out folks in Africa because I think you guys really could use it. So I think that type of stuff needs to happen more often.
That's interesting. There's another one here. Hello, from Ronald Magembe. Hello, thanks, Dale, for this. And I'm inquiring. Dr. Chase said something like, if you don't use this AI, someone else will. But my inquiry is that how do you trust agentic AI? Agentic AIs like Claude and others with company data you feed it.
Yeah, you don't trust them. That's number one. And understand that it's just like if you put your company data into a Google search, guess what? You just put it on the internet for everybody out there to look at. So, does that mean that these AI systems don't have the capability to keep your stuff secure? No, there's capabilities there, but you should just be aware that the way that those systems work is by getting a lot of data and a lot of information and a lot of interaction. You're the user, you're training the system for Anthropic or for OpenAI or whoever. So just be aware that what you share is shared and it's going to be in there for the duration of the internet.
Another one here is how do you think we could cover the ever-growing cybersecurity gap and maybe the nations that is cyber aware and or ahead of uh, just like China?
Yeah, I mean, we're never going to cover everything, but I think back to that whole if everything's a priority, nothing is. I think that that's something that every organization should do better is really understanding what you can fix, what you can't fix, where you can align resources, and then the things that you can just kind of let go sideways. This is where I think it's a prioritization problem, and it's also a reality thing. It used to be that only big governments and big banks were of interest to nation states. Now everybody everywhere is because it's not you, they want your connections. So just understand that you can't have that argument anymore of like, well, I run a small shop of three people. Why does China care about us? They don't care about you, but they care about who you connect to.
Yeah, I think Target would be the good example of such situations of supply chain attacks and how it can affect an organization in a
Oh
large
yeah.
scale, I think. Yeah.
Hmm.
And we have several examples of just a third party causing issues, and especially now the fact that we use a lot of API integrations. That's where most of our problems come in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
APIs are good, but APIs are risky.
Mm.
So, could you
Yes.
leave us with a real world example of actually how you responded to an incident and the whole 9 years from the time you saw the incident to the time you completely eradicated it?
Sure. So, without getting into specifics, but basically, if you could imagine a company, usually it's on a Friday or Saturday night, systems start acting up, some weird things happen, and you start to see cascading outages or proliferation of compromise activity through different nodes in the network. So that's part one. If an organization is well architected, they'll be able to respond to that much quicker. The organizations that I've been lucky enough to work with usually are able to get to that pretty quickly, and then it's because they have a really good understanding and context of what's going on in systems. Like I'm not a fan of SIM technology because I think it just shows you that there's a problem. It doesn't actually tell you what to do about it. There's a lot of better systems out there nowadays. So if you can get that context, you start applying controls. And again, back to all roads lead to Rome. The one thing I'm going to shut down is the connections between those cascading outages and infected systems. And if you can do that, then you're recoverable. And then the follow-on side to that is to make sure that an organization has a really good, really accurate backup. Because if you are hit and you are down, the best thing you can do is get back up online without redoing the same problem that you're facing now. So having a good backup means, okay, we can roll back. Let's go back to where we had a known good, and then we'll be able to move forward and go forward from there. So, without going through all the specifics, that's kind of the broad strokes. And if you can recover, then you can get back in action and start doing things to fix the problem.
You hinted at something which some of us who work in the SOC will be like, ew, why don't I,
Yes,
why
the
wouldn't you
same.
use a SIM as the golden rule? But yeah, could you recommend, what do you think? Like,
I
yes.
mean, SIM is not SIM
So
is, like I said, SIM as a standalone, like SIM is a one thing, it just shows you things on a screen, and it doesn't really give you a lot of context of what's going on. And if you guys sit in a SOC and you
people
look
like
at
the activity.
yeah, if you look at that alert status, it just tells you, and then what's the first thing you do? You start investigating on the alerts, right? And then if you've got thousands of those a day, how do you prioritize? Which ones do you fix? Where do you go after? Now in this time frame, 2026, there are systems out there that will provide you really good context on what an alert actually means. And then sometimes, depending on the policy, it might even deploy a control. And I mean, I've seen some systems where
Mhm.
they do that and they deploy a control in under 3 seconds. I mean, that's a pretty good approach to the problem. And from a leadership perspective, I would rather tell the CEO of the company, hey, we stopped an attack in 3 seconds than we did a bunch of analysis and oops, we'll get back to it.
That's
That's an
true.
interesting way of looking at it.
Is
So
that the
you
SOAR?
so you recommend a SAW or a SIM,
I
which
think that
is
there's a
Yeah.
combination of tools out there now that do these things. SOAR, SOC. There's sort of AI powered SOC enablement. There's a whole market around this now. NDR, XDR, like all those things. So, but it
Hmm.
ultimately boils down to the policy level controls at the back end of that you make a decision. If you guys work in a SOC, right? If X does Y, then we apply Z. And as long as you can do that, you're in a
Yeah.
pretty good spot.
Mm.
okay. Thank
Sure.
you, Dr. Chase. As we are winding down, for folks who don't know what you have in place or something else that you have that is going on in your life that you want to share with the world, what is that, and where can people find you?
Yeah, if you look up on Patreon, I'm on Patreon, and I have a closed loop of things there. I publish research and I share articles and stuff on my Dr. Zero Trust Patreon page. The YouTube, I keep everything out there and available for anybody anywhere. I'm currently working on a couple of books that should be out probably before the end of the year, and that's kind of where everything is right now in the Dr. ZT world.
Okay, that's interesting. Let me pull up again your YouTube channel. For those who didn't get it, please go and check out Dr. Zero Trust himself. He has a lot to share and a lot to for you to pick on, and this is just barely scratching the surface. So be sure to check him out.
I'll throw the Patreon list in here too, just so that people can have that as well.
Yes, check it out, and thank you all for coming on the show. Thank you, Dr. Chase, for being with us, and it has been a great delight to have you on the show. I don't know if Angela has something to say.
They were putting me on the spot. Thank you for everyone who tuned in. Thank you, Dr. Cunningham, for for your time and insights. Yes, please check out our other videos of the Cyber Weekly. Let's continue learning together.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And, if I can
That's
ever help with something, folks, never hesitate to reach out because if I don't know the answer, I'll find somebody that does.
Thank you.
for sure.
Thank you very much.